The reason why I think the problems happen is because of the love and the passion that people have for their kids. They want so badly to help them to reach the highest level of play that they would like to reach, and so when they see that their little Bobby at 10 years old has got a pretty good arm, he's bringing it pretty good, and he can swing a bat, and he's doing really good at this level, we jump the gun. Yes. We immediately want to say, okay, we're starting to think about college already.
I've had people text me or call me or talk to me, and multiple times they've kind of said the same thing. Similar to this, they'll say, this is such a great idea. This would be so good for the kids. However, the parents would never go for it. How do those two thoughts even make sense together? This is great for the kids. This would be so good, but the parents wouldn't go for it.
Well, it's episode 5. We've been doing this thing for a month now, but it feels like we're just beginning the conversation. We've got a lot more to say on the Coaching Life podcast with Chris Stewart and Pat Martin. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. We hope you enjoy today's episode because it begins right now. I'm Chris. I'm one of your hosts, and my friend Pat has a theory. Let's hear it, Pat.
So last episode, we talked about or introduced this idea of unstructured free play. And I have a theory that kind of came to me last weekend as we were traveling to a travel ball tournament, actually. Just kind of hit me, put it together piece by piece. But over the last 20 to 40 years, me, you, other people have grown up in sports. And most likely, the majority of us began playing sports with our friends out in the yard on our own. Our first experience with baseball or basketball or whatever it is was not in an organized league. It was playing sandlot with our friends.
Yeah, I can say that's true for me.
Okay, yeah. Definitely for me. And I feel like it would be more prevalent for most people, as more than it is today. So we were playing with our friends, we were learning the game, and we were having a great time. We were having fun. And I think we're missing today this, what I would call a maturation process in sports. Because I think for me and for others, as we were playing with our friends, we did it for different reasons than what we did it for 15 years down the road, I would say. So we would, we were playing wiffle ball, we were playing baseball and on the local ball fields. We were putting together sandlot teams, 5-on-5, 6-on-6. We made our own rules, made stipulations to make it work. And as we talked about, when we talked about unstructured free play, we would learn the game. We would learn how to make decisions. We would learn that winning is fun, right? And we would begin to slowly develop a what I would consider a more precise or I would just say developed aspect and understanding of the sport that we were playing. And as we went along, we would graduate levels of game. We would go from 8U to 10U to traditional little league. Yeah. Go from coach pitch to kid pitch, and then we would get into 13U, and the bases would move back. We would begin to understand that our love of winning would become more prominent, and we would begin to work harder. Just naturally, you'd begin to work harder, and we begin to have a different understanding about the game than what we did when we started. We would begin to care more about what I would consider the grind and about practice and about getting better, right? Whereas before, the most important thing was fun. So we've kind of, just as all people do, we develop as individuals from a child.
As an evolution process.
A child to an adolescent, to an adult, right? And that happens, I think, not just in life, but it happens with our understanding of sports. So, we go to high school ball and we play high school ball, and it means a different thing to us than it meant before. Some of us had the opportunity and ability to play college ball. Some of us went on to play a minor league ball, maybe even in a professional ball. Although I do think professional ball players typically do have a different perspective on youth sports than most, but that's a discussion for another day.
You're not kidding. Yeah. That's another Twitter reach out that I had from someone last week that they ran into. Did you happen to see that?
Oh, yes, I did. I remember what you're talking about.
Ran into him at a tournament, and he said that he saw the article and they were talking about it, and And gosh, who was it?
I can't remember.
Yeah,
I remember he set out in the outfield.
I'll have to find it. Yeah,
You find that.
But-
and I'll go ahead.
I just want to say the youth portion of that, that when we're kids and we go out and we find a place to play and we just do it. We select our teams and we kind of, it's part of our play. That was our choice of how we played.
Yeah.
Of what kind of things we're going to play. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't, of all things that we could have chosen to do, that was what we wanted to do. It
was fun.
It wasn't mom and dad saying, "Hey, you got practice tonight, and we're going to load up the car at this time and go."
Yes.
That wasn't really, although it may be your choice to play. I mean, that's organized structure. You don't have a choice about that. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But this, those first 10 years of just going out and finding a place to play, you don't have to do that.
Right.
That's just you doing it, and you gathering up the guys to do it, and that's missing today. You're saying
It is missing. And my point here is that development period that you get is missing. So when we've, graduated, I would say, from our playing days and we have children or we get into coaching, our perspective at that point is a developed perspective. And I think a lot of times we forget about this maturation process that we went through that kids are missing today. We have an understanding of what it takes to win at the high school level or what it takes to be successful at the college level, and we immediately try to implement that into our children. And we're
removing that younger portion, right?
Yes.
It begins too early.
Right. And I think that is a great supporting argument for unstructured free play in our practices, and any time that we can get our kids out and give them the opportunity to play with their friends.
Yeah.
Because they don't have that now. Everyone says kids are different now than they used to be, and I don't think they are. I don't think kids are different. I think we live in a different world. And we manage them different than what we were managing. When I was playing baseball, I don't ever remember my dad getting on me for not hustling, right? I don't ever remember him getting on me because I dropped my elbow when I was swinging. Most of the time when my parents, when my mom or dad gave me a hard time, it was because I was either too hard on myself or because I acted in a manner unbecoming of a Martin. I would throw a helmet or something like that. And
disgrace the family name.
Sure, which is, that's exactly. Actually, we have a running joke in the family that one high school game, I almost got kicked out of the family because of the way I acted. My mom was real mad at me, so that's a running joke. But we handle our kids different now. And I think, that it's part of the development of being a coach, of being a parent. We need to think about, and I would love to hear everyone's thoughts on this. We need to think about that maturation process that we had the opportunity to go through, but really that our kids don't have the opportunity to go through now.
And that's some of your motivation behind having them play a game of wiffle ball as part of the practice. And that's the motivation behind saying that this would actually be I guess it's a organized, unorganized, an organized way to say we're going to do something that's not it's not going to look that organized.
Sure.
It's actually an intentional part of a player development protocol, a player development model.
Right, because just like you say, you've said in the past, in our last episode, if we don't make the coaches' collaboration meetings and trainings mandatory, they're probably not going to happen.
Yep.
I would say if you're not intent and purposely make these unstructured free plays occur, they won't happen in the capacity that they need to happen. I think you have to.
Yeah, or it might happen now and then, once a season or something like, oh, we did that. Remember when we did that one thing, that fun thing one time?
Right.
Yeah. It needs to become a regular thing.
Sure.
Because it was a regular thing for us, for those of us that, and I think, it's real easy also, I think, for people to listen and say, oh, there they are talking about the good old days. It was better back then. And that's certainly not what we're saying. I mean, my goodness, the facilities that the kids get to play on these days are second to none. I mean, we had nothing like what they, the support, the parental support, and I think the love. The reason why I think the problems happen is because of the love and the passion that people have for their kids. They want so badly to help them to reach the highest level of play that they would like to reach, and so when they see that their, little Bobby at 10 years old has got a pretty good arm, he's bringing it pretty good, and he can swing a bat, and he's doing really good at this level, we jump the gun.
Yes.
We immediately want to say, okay, we're starting to think about college already. We just get way ahead of ourselves, and in doing so, we miss that very important developmental process, part of the process that you have outlined already.
Right. Now, just to clarify, that's exactly what I did. This isn't a theory that I've created necessarily because I've seen flaws in other people. It's come to me because I know that's as a parent, that's what I thought. That was, I have ideas. I've played baseball for a long time. I understand the game. I've coached for a while. I can give my sons an advantage that other people don't have. So I'm going to start right away and start working on it right away.
Yeah.
But I actually.
And so you get them the personal instruction, or you provide it yourself.
Right.
You get them out there on the tee every day. And it's whether they want to or not.
Yes.
You're doing this. Yeah.
I remember. My older son Jake. I remember when he was 5 years old, and we went out in the yard and we hitting off a tee, and then I think at some point he just said, "I don't want to hit anymore."
And it kind of shoots right through you, doesn't it?
Oh, gosh,
initially.
Yeah. Go run sprints, boy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I said in the last episode, I'm not against travel ball, and I'm not against personal instruction. In fact, I provide personal instruction. My son provides personal instruction. It's something that we can do to provide a service for people, and as long as somebody wants it, then I feel like it's a way for me to be useful and helpful if someone wants to get better. But I'll tell you this, even among the kids that I provide personal instruction for, I've got about 15 kids that I work with. I can tell when the kid really wants to be there versus when mom or dad scheduled this for them.
Sure.
And a lot of times when I'm working with someone and I can tell that they don't really want to be here, we'll put the gloves down and we'll sit down on a bucket and we'll start talking a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about baseball. We'll talk maybe not about baseball, maybe about other things, about what's going on, how they did in school today, what happened, what'd you have for lunch, and as we get to talking, after a while, the kid will look at me and say, "Hey, can we throw now? Can we do something?" And then it's different. I mean, we may have talked for 15 minutes. We may have taken 15 minutes of their hour of time to just do that, but the last 45 minutes are so much more meaningful and so much more valuable and impactful because now they want to be there, as opposed to me just having a plan and saying this is what we're going to get through because your parents paying me $40 to do it, and it's just so much. It's so much better when it's just their choice. They want to be there, and sometimes that is. I mean, we're not bemoaning personal instruction. If you want to get your kids personal instruction, by all means, do it, but make sure they really want to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the fundamental concept that we're talking about when we talk about unstructured free play. When we're talking about more practices than games, because I feel like if you asked a kid, or if you could, because what I've discovered over the last few weeks, we've been asking some kids some different things, what their thoughts were and some questions and things like that, and they've answered, but they don't always give. They don't always give the answer you think they're going to give, and they don't always give an answer that is probably true or the closest to their heart because they give an answer that they think you want. Exactly. They're a little guarded around. I'm telling you, I asked one of our players yesterday. I interviewed him, and he was a pro at this. I thought that I was talking to. I actually was a little intimidated talking to this 11-year-old because he was so smooth, and it was great. Let me ask you this: what's your favorite thing to do in baseball? Like, when are you having the most fun, and what's happening?
When we're immersing the team and everyone else is just having really fun and not worrying about losing.
All right, good job, thanks.
What was your favorite thing about this year's baseball season?
I feel like everybody was closer together to each other than we have been in years past.
Your teammates?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. What was your least favorite thing about this year's baseball season? And don't worry, I'm not going to tell your coach.
Oh, crap. I don't know. I mean, I liked it. I liked everything. I'm not sure.
Well, good. Was it a good... Did you guys have a good year?
Yeah.
What made it a good year? How do you define a good year?
I mean, if you get better, if you learn something.
What's your favorite thing to do while you're playing baseball?
Just have fun.
I've always said, well, I haven't always said because I haven't always thought about it, but I've said recently that if you asked a kid the first game of the season that they played, or just it's not even the first game, if you took a kid and played him, 150 games in a summer, right? And you asked them how excited they were to play in the first game, if you could somehow tap into their brain and put a meter on how excited they are, I guarantee that they're more excited to play that first game than they are the 150th game. And 150 is probably an exaggeration, but we have 8-year-olds playing 80 games a year.
Oh, easily.
So it's true. No matter how many games you play, whether it's 10, 20, 30, you're going to that 30th game, unless there's different situations, things can change, and a championship game might be more fun, but if all things are equal, the first game is going to be more important to them than the 80th game or the 150th
Yeah,
game.
I would say especially in that context of the travel season, because the very nature of it is you're playing a different tournament every weekend, which means you've got the opportunity to play for 6 or 7 or 8 different championships. And so if you don't happen to win this one, okay, no big deal. We got another chance for a trophy next weekend, as opposed to like a high school season where everything culminates to that one final team that's standing at the end. And same is true for professional players. I'm sure that the first game is a lot more exciting, but I guarantee you, as they get into October, it starts to get exciting again because of the nature of what you're playing for.
Right.
And you don't have that same nature in travel ball. It's almost ho hum when if you play, especially teams that win a lot of championships. If you play 5 tournaments and you won 3 championships, and you do that every year, you can collect a lot of trophies, and no big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Something I would mention, kind of on the same lines, but not exactly, is I read an article one day. It's been years ago, a counterpoint. And it was actually regarding basketball. Because in basketball, you'll go in these tournaments, these AAU tournaments, and you might play 3 or 4 games a day. And the argument was kids are learning that in order to play 4 games a day, they have to conserve some energy in the first, second, third game to be able to be, almost their best in the 4th game.
Yeah.
So they're not playing their best from an effort perspective on the first, second, third, fourth, the games leading up to the last game. They're conserving energy. I would say that would be true in travel ball as well, because you're going to be there all day. Mm-hmm. You have to maintain energy to finish. So you're taking a little bit off, and what the end point of that is kids are learning basically not to give their all in a game. So when you get to high school, you play 1 game a day, and you're not. It's ho hum. That's a great way to describe it. They're just kind of going through the motions. It's funny though, because I know in college ball you kind of go back to the opposite.
Right. You see the energy there.
Yeah.
But when you get used to playing at the level, when you get used to doing anything at less than maximum effort, and you realize I can still get this job done, but I can get it done with less effort, then that becomes the norm. And so you see so many people out there, if you get so frustrated at why does it look like some of your kids are playing with less than maximum effort, I think it's because of the very thing that you just described. Because 1, they have to do that because they're playing so many darn games. But 2, it becomes the norm. They've gotten used to it. If a kid doesn't run a hard 90, if he's not sprint, how many times why do you have to coach kids up on running hard 90s? Why do you have to almost give them incentives, to sprint from the batter's box through the first base bag on every ball they hit? I don't care if it's a pop-up, a lazy ground ball. I don't care if it's a hard line drive to center field and you're probably only going to get a single. Why is it so hard to see every single person on your roster do that? Why doesn't everybody do that? That's as you can tell, that's a sticking point for me.
I've got an idea of why they don't.
Because
do
it becomes way too normal to just jog it out.
Yeah. Well, I actually made this point as I was watching the kids play wiffle ball in baseball practice. My son was having a miserable time. He was having a miserable time because he was losing.
Yeah.
And he was playing hard.
Really?
because he was losing. Now there was a point where he kind of gave up, but then it got close again, and he popped back in. But what they learned from that unstructured play is, if I don't want to feel like this again. You know what I mean? I don't want to lose. So next time I'm going to run hard through the bag. You know, and that happens. If they don't run hard through the bag, they get out. So next time they got to do it. You know, and I think games are important. I would say some people would say, well, that's what you get, you know, out of games. But there's a different environment. There's a different aura about playing with your friends and kind of going through the maturation process that I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
What's your least favorite part?
The feeling of losing.
The feeling of losing?
Yeah.
What makes that the least favorite?
Because I don't know, it's just when you lose, you don't feel good about it.
Yeah, you know you could do better?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know you can do better.
Earlier we mentioned that there are a lot of times you'll find that pro athletes do have a different mindset about travel ball, about youth ball, the way it's running. And what you'll find is a lot of pro players tend to side with the kinds of things that we're talking about. And I mentioned that someone reached out to me on Twitter and said they this past weekend, or I guess it was a couple weekends ago, they met retired Detroit Tiger Brandon Inge at a 14U baseball tournament. And he said he agrees with just about everything that you've said recently about youth baseball tournaments and player development. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Definitely.
And he said, very nice guy, sat alone behind the outfield fence to watch his son play. His son's an infielder, so it was probably more about getting away from the other parents than being close to the action. But he said his son actually plays for a community-based team with his friends, not an elite high-level tournament team. So it sounds like maybe he was at a travel tournament, a 14U tournament. It sounds like maybe the type of team he played for was the kind that you said your son plays on as a 13U.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So,
and I think there's a secret that we haven't got into yet, and you kind of alluded to it in the last episode of telling people get ready for the player development program to really take hold, because there's a secret to making better athletes out of our kids, and that's something that I think is going to drive your statement, drive the player development program as we go forward. But we'll get into that as we go.
yeah. You talking about pro players?
I'm talking about kids in general being better, being more healthy. And
yes.
yeah,
yes.
and being in better shape.
That is
and
definitely
things
going to
like
be part of what we talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'll tell you where I thought maybe you were going, and that is, with today's technology, you can look up on YouTube anything that you want to see in terms of how should I teach this or how should I do this.
Right.
And a lot of times what you'll find is you'll find a pro player taking his time, taking time out of his day to set up a phone and say, here's how I do, BP off of a tee. Here's how I do front toss. Here's why I do this. And here's an idea for how to get your kids to land on a stiffer front leg when he's pitching. Whatever it is, you'll find you can find pro players who are willing to teach that kind of thing. And it's interesting to me how many times we run into things that are being taught to young players that are opposite of what the pro guys are doing.
Yeah,
and
by the pros.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've even heard people say this, well, you can do that when you become a pro.
Oh, I hate when people say that. Yeah.
Well, why are they a pro?
Yes.
Because they do those things.
Yeah, if you're going to imitate something, if you're going to imitate someone to be better, why wouldn't you imitate the best there is at doing that? You know what I mean?
I understand why some of the things are said. Sometimes we see pro players behave in certain ways that you wouldn't want your kids to emulate. And I think a lot of times the things that happen, we mix fundamental skills with behavioral issues. And I think a lot of times it's the behavioral issues that we see that we're like, don't do that. Don't turn around and throw a ball into the center field stands because you're upset. Although what's ironic about that is all these Cleveland fans, which I know you are one, are upset because they want to see a little bit of fire out of somebody. And then when somebody shows them a little bit of fire and throws a ball into the stands, they're like, trade this guy.
Just for the record, I really miss Trevor Bauer.
I'm glad to have him as a Reds fan.
Yeah.
So
we'll enjoy him for the next year and a half.
Yeah.
because he's gone.
He's
after
the
that.
1-year contract man. So see if he likes Cincinnati. Well, let's talk for a few minutes here and maybe introduce, and we'll pick up next time because this is going to take longer than just 10 minutes or however much time we have left. How would somebody get started? Let's say I'm sitting in Missouri and I'm listening to our podcast and I think to myself, I would like to do this. I want my kid to grow up playing in this type of scenario. And I have a little bit of influence. You know, I know the league president, or I have a friend who's on the board, the local board of my youth organization. So what do I do to get this thing started? And I think that there's probably a lot of different answers to that because, as we mentioned, it might be hard to implement this into an existing program because the existing program has a lot of traditions, a lot of things that are driving it, and there may be a lot of good to that existing program and good things that you're going to continue to do in a player development program, but it might also be necessary to say, hey, listen, we need to have a complete revisioning of how we do youth ball. We need to completely reorganize how we're doing youth ball to encompass some of these things that we're talking about. But it might actually be easier to just start from scratch. To just say, you know, here's what we got. Here's what it looks like. And even if we have a handful of families, let's start this thing from scratch. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about around here? We're recording this from southeastern Ohio.
Yeah.
Which is like a lot of small town communities in the country.
Right. Well, when you talk about it maybe, you know, taking 4 or 5 years, I think when you say that, I think about, you know, the parents. And I've had people text me or call me or talk to me, and they kind of said multiple times, they've kind of said the same thing. They've similar to this. They'll say, you know, this is such a great idea. This would be so good for the kids. However, the parents would never go for it. Mm. How do those two thoughts even make sense together? You know, this is great for the kids. This would be so good, but the parents wouldn't go for it. And I think it's just what you said of getting people on board and changing the way we think about youth sports. We have to go through, you know, some sort of change. And it's hard because here's the facts. Youth sports has become one of the biggest industries, you know, in our country. Yeah. There's a lot of money riding on this, you know.
There are people whose full-time job is to run tournaments. Yeah. Full-time job is to run a travel organization.
Right.
And
so the key, I think the key is, and you said the word momentum. That's the key, is to get as many people as you can on board with it, as many parents looking for this type of thing, as many coaches thinking, you know, this is what we need to do. And as you develop those people and share information with them and we begin to discuss, that's the best way to put the next foot forward to get a bunch of people that agree with you. I do think it's going to be difficult. I think people just have to start thinking and deciding, you know, why do we, if we're not going to go in this direction, why would we not? You know, what do we support over our current infrastructure that we don't support in this one? And honestly, I really believe if we search our souls, our hearts, the answer to that question is a lot of selfish reasons. You know, I mean, I love watching my kids play organized games. I really do. And trust me, you know, I talked about how it was fun to get on parents. Very difficult for me to sit there and watch some of the stuff that was going on. But if you change your thinking and understand that that's good for them to do what they're doing, you know, it's a little easier to embrace.
Yeah. So I guess if any of you out there listening are involved in a local league or you're involved in a travel organization, it probably would be easier to do this in a travel organization because instead of talking about multiple teams in a given locale, you're talking about one team. You know, I mean, one multiple age groups of one team, of the same team, whatever the name of that team might be. But you have a lot more control there. So if you're involved in any of those and you're getting excited about the thought of this could be reality. Yeah, it sounds idealistic. I understand. But it could be reality. And if you believe that, then start talking with people. Start, take this to, like I said, that, I had someone reach out to me on Twitter and say that they're actually tonight, they set up a meeting with league representatives. And that's how it starts. High school baseball coaches, if you want this to happen, I've talked with high school baseball coaches locally who read that article and they're like, this has got to take place. We've got to find a way to do this. Well, you've got a lot of influence, high school coaches. Go to those league presidents and say, these are kids that are coming into my program. And if we want to see our local schools competing at a higher level in our states, then this is the route we need to go. If you believe it that this would be beneficial, then this is the route we need to go. Whatever influence you have, and everyone has a little bit. Everybody has some, because if your kid doesn't play in that league, then that's influence right there.
Right.
So you got the choice of take your child to play wherever you want. And I'm telling you, like I said in the last episode, if I've got a choice and I sit down, it's not just my choice, it's my children's choice as well. And we sit down with them and we say, these are our options. And our kids are enjoying being with their friends, developing as players, and having the opportunity to learn the game, partly because their coaches are instilling it in them, but also partly because their coaches are allowing them to play it on their own, like we said. And it's fun. They still have really great uniforms. They still have really great fields to play on. They're still playing games, and there's still the excitement of the competition, and it's happening. Then the choice I could see my family making would be the choice that provides the player development model over any other model that's out there right now.
Right. Well worded.
So, well, we have got to talk about the structure. What I mean by structure is, if in an ideal, if you and I had the opportunity to just write this thing up right now, if someone came to us and said, Pat, Chris, I'm going to fund this. I'm going to fund it. I'm going to make it happen. We're going to build you some fields. Or if someone came to you and said, hey, we already have fields. I've got a league that I run, and I want you guys to do this in our league. What would it look like? From August to August, what would it look like? And that's what we need to outline, I think, next. Do you think so?
Yep, sounds good.
We'll do it next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.